After months of hype and speculation, Sony has finally released a number of new tiers for the popular PS Plus subscription service. Now, you'll have access to a wide assortment of PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 games, similar to what Microsoft has been doing with their Game Pass. But that's not all. If you subscribe to either the Deluxe or the Premium tiers, you'll have access to a bunch of classic games released on the PlayStation, PlayStation 2, and PlayStation Portable. And that's where we step in. As of launch week, there are currently 13 games available that came from the original PlayStation. Those include a smattering of big names and cult classics, along with a number of franchises that Sony unceremoniously dropped a long time ago, much to the frustration of the fans. In order to see if any of these games are actually worth playing, I'm going to flip through the pages of classic magazines like Electronic Gaming Monthly, Ultra Game Players, PSM, and more to see what the critics said when these games first came out. Come, join me for the first part in this 2-day premiere of the PlayStation Plus review crew.
Are ready. Are you? Guess not.
History may remember Ape Escape as being one of the cartoony platformers that Sony abandoned after running it into the ground, but this game was a big deal when it was first released in 1999. More than anything else, it was a showpiece for Sony's DualShock controller, which meant that it was the first game that you couldn't play with the standard gamepad that came with the early PlayStation units. The gamble ultimately paid off, and Ape Escape proved to be a big hit with not only gamers, but also with critics. Electronic Gaming Monthly ended up giving it their Game of the Month prize, with John D. praising it for being something genuinely unique and original for a platformer. If you can tolerate the crap music and cutesy look, Ape Escape is definitely worth a look. Crispin summed it up this way: from its oddball story to its ridiculous sound effects, Ape Escape is a big bundle of wackiness. Extremely innovative wackiness. Next Generation was even more enthusiastic about the game, raving that it was one of the best games of the year. Frankly, we couldn't stop playing. Ape Escape manages to appeal to a very broad range of players. Its general, lighthearted cuteness makes it ideal for younger players, but its originality and challenge will also appeal to the most jaded hardcore players. A terrific game. You end up seeing a similar score coming from PSM, who gave the game a perfect 5 out of 5. Computers and Video Games also loved the game and gave it a 4 out of 5. Believe it or not, it was actually GameFan who ended up giving Ape Escape the lowest scores. Critic ECM went as low as giving it a 60%, arguing that he could call this game ill-conceived, uninspired, and downright boring. I'll simply call it Blasto 2, the Next Generation, and leave it at that. Look, don't let that questionable take turn you off of Ape Escape, because the rest of the critics were right. This was an innovative game with tons of charm. And if you've never played the original Ape Escape, now is the perfect time to catch the fun. While Electronic Arts continued to perfect the golf simulator with the Tiger Woods franchise, Sony decided to go in a completely different direction. I don't care if you call it Hot Shots Golf or Everybody's Golf, because this 1998 classic from Camelot is a legitimate hit with cartoony graphics, colorful courses, and charismatic characters. The game proved to be so much fun that it ended up spawning 6 sequels, a VR version, and even a tennis spin-off. Looking back, it's fun to see that charm rub off on the critics, who simply couldn't resist this game. Electronic Gaming Monthly's Sushi X posed this question: hate golf games? Well, maybe you just haven't met the right one yet. Hot Shots Golf is seamless, fast-paced golf tempered with great gameplay and a lighthearted approach that makes this game surprisingly enjoyable. Sean agreed, though gave the game a slightly lower score. Hot Shots provides hours of fun play, but mastering your short game and avoiding shanking may be tricky. It seems all too easy to be slightly off on the gauge and end up in the sand trap or a lake. Computer and video games weren't nearly as impressed, giving the game a 3 out of 5. Their complaint seems fairly obvious. If you buy Hot Shots Golf expecting some PGA simulation, after a couple of days of playing it, it will end up gathering dust. Although this is a simple game to just pick up and play, there's no real sense of enjoyment in sitting through tournament after tournament trying to get the hidden courses up. It feels like robot golf. Swing, hit, chip, putt, and repeat until finished. Next Generation, on the other hand, was much kinder to the first Hot Shots game. While American sports developers and publishers have been busy coming up with enough cash to buy the Tiger Woods license, Sony of Japan has managed to create the first golf game since the early PGA Tour golfs that is actually fun. They did argue that the big-headed golfers and secret characters seem to be geared to appeal to fighting game fans and are likely to turn off real golf aficionados, but still found the game fun enough to give it a 4 out of 5. That seems like a fair score to me, because even if it doesn't have the bells and whistles of the later installments, this first Hot Shots Golf is still a whole lot of fun to play. After a whole generation of blocks dropping from the sky, IQ Intelligent Qube marked a nice change of pace for the puzzle genre. Using the new technology to create concepts that were otherwise unheard of on the 16-bit platforms, this 1997 cult classic quickly became a hit amongst those who were lucky enough to be in the know. And while the reviews were a little mixed, pretty much everybody agreed that this was a puzzle game worth paying attention to. Over at Electronic Gaming Monthly, John was Intelligent Qube's biggest cheerleader, calling it a refreshingly unique puzzle game that is both highly addictive and a nice change of pace from all those Me Too block droppers that have been flooding the market lately. HG also liked there are no falling pieces, though noted that visually the 3D doesn't look too hot, but it does what it was intended to do. A 2-player simultaneous mode would have been welcomed, but this is more about challenging each individual. Elsewhere, we saw Edge give Intelligent Qube a so-so 7 out of 10, which is pretty much on par with the 3.5 out of 5 that we saw from PSM. Of all the magazines, it was Die Hard Game Fan who ended up being the most impressed with this 32-bit puzzler. The Inquirer gave it an 88% and called it the best new puzzle game that has been released in many years. The control is a little awkward, but once mastered, IQ is really addictive. The music is really amazing in terms of quality and originality, and the levels are some of the hardest 3D puzzle levels ever. Look, it may not be as flashy as other PS2 games available, but most critics agree that you should at least give it a look.
Over 200 apes are on the loose, and it's up to you to stop them. Introducing Ape Escape. You'll use plenty of anti-ape devices, like a stun club, a slingshot, and monkey radar. You'll chase apes in a tank. You'll steer a remote-control car. You'll even launch an aerial attack in a propeller-powered Skyflyer. But you better prepare yourself, because things can get pretty hairy. Ape Escape. You better get them before they get you. PlayStation.
Before Super Mario 64 or Crash Bandicoot, there was Jumping Flash, the world's first 3D platformer. Starring a giant mechanical rabbit going up against a Hawaiian-themed villain, it was clear from the jump that this wasn't gonna be your typical action game. Boy, jump is clearly the right word here, because our robot hero can jump over skyscrapers in a single bound. Yeah! While the franchise sadly fizzled out over time, Jumping Flash will always be remembered as a giant leap forward for the platforming genre. Looking at the reviews, Electronic Gaming Monthly seemed genuinely shocked that Jumping Flash turned out so well. Scott gave it a 9 and said, a giant mechanical rabbit-type substance? Who couldn't fall instantly in love with Jumpin' Flash? Precise control and fast-changing top-down view let Jumping Flash reach unprecedented heights. Mike also liked the game, but issued a warning. Those who have motion sickness, beware! First, let me start off by saying that this has got to be one of the weirdest games that I've seen or played in a long time. The best part of this game is that anyone will be able to pick it up, play it, and have a ton of fun. GamePro also liked the game, giving it a 4 out of 5. Don't be put off by the juvenile concept of this game. Controlling a cybernetic rabbit in a hostile virtual world could translate into the sleeper game of the year. Die Hard game fan agreed, concluding that Jumping Flash will go down in history as one of the most monumentally innovative games of all time. And then there's Next Generation, who loved the game so much that they gave it a rare, perfect 5 out of 5 stars. Jumping Flash is the kind of game that will legitimize a new console in a hurry. From concept to execution, everything here is simply superb. There's no escaping the cute factor in this game, but never has there been such a fine excuse for cuteness. This game must be played to be truly understood. And hey, now is your chance to give Jumping Flash a play and find out if you truly understand its greatness. Nearly 2 decades after first introducing the world to Dig Dug, Namco returned with a spiritual successor for a brand new era. His name was Mr. Driller, and this 1999 PlayStation game helped to turn this adorable hero into a household name. With more than a dozen sequels and spin-offs, this is a fan-favorite franchise that is easy to get into and appeals to pretty much everybody. But were the critics impressed? The answer to that question may depend on who you ask. Giving it a 6 out of 10, I would say that Electronic Gaming Monthly was a little mixed on Mr. Digger. Mr. D is a weird hybrid that'll take some time getting used to. Mind you, the game can be particularly fun, but all in all, it just doesn't have that special something that makes other, more popular puzzle games as addictive as they are. PSM liked the game a little bit more than EGM, giving it a 3.5 out of 5 and complaining that it might be a little too cutesy for some players. If you can appreciate its charm, Mr. Driller is a very enjoyable game. There's strategy, fast action, and goofy saloon piano music. You can really get zoned out playing it, which is a trademark of most great puzzle games. Its only real negative is the modes don't offer much variety and the action gets stale sooner than it should. Believe it or not, Next Generation ended up giving Mr. Driller the highest score with a 4 out of 5. Game Fan, on the other hand, came away confused by this game. Ego gave it a 69% and complained that, "I don't get this game." In arcades in Japan, people were playing it a lot, yet now, just like back then, I still don't understand the fascination with it. Drill down through blocks, collecting air bubbles, and this is fun? I like puzzle games just as much as the next guy, but Choo Choo Rocket on Dreamcast will get my puzzle time, not this. Look, I can't deny, Choo Choo Rocket is a lot of fun. You know what? You should also give Mr. Driller a play. It's definitely more fun than Ego makes it sound. Hot on the heels of the breakout success of Resident Evil, Capcom decided to squeeze a few more dollars out of the survival horror game by releasing this controversial director's cut. When Capcom originally announced the second version of the game, they teased that the bits originally censored in the American release would be included, along with a number of fixes, and you know what, some new content too. Unfortunately, when the game finally came out, the American version was still edited and that new content was minimal. This resulted in something of a backlash from the critics, especially the ones who worked at Electronic Gaming Monthly at the time. Sushi X summed it up this way: "The best thing about Resident Evil Director's Cut is the Resident Evil 2 demo included on the additional CD. Otherwise, this is the same old Resident Evil with slightly enhanced graphics. In a really bad move, Director's Cut isn't uncensored, which makes this a waste of money." Kelly also disliked the game, but had a more fundamental problem with the series. Considering I feel that Resident Evil is a glorified version of Alone in the Dark, this title didn't exactly overwhelm me. I mean, is there another PlayStation action game that is slower paced and has worse loading time than Resident Evil? Now, in case you're looking for the total opposite of EGM's take, I give you PSM's review, where they gave this director's cut a perfect 5 out of 5. Gamers looking for a completely new experience may be a bit disappointed, but if you love Resident Evil as much as we do, then the game definitely belongs in your collection. There are certainly enough extras to warrant a second look, and you know you can't resist that Resident Evil 2 demo. So then, if PSM loved it and EGM hated it, then how are we gonna break this tie? Well, as it turns out, Ultra Game players ended up siding with PSM, giving Resident Evil Director's Cut a near-perfect 9.5 out of 10. After gushing about the modes and extras, Roger Burchell confesses, "The only real disappointment is that Capcom seems to have reneged on the promise of a truly uncut Resident Evil. Some of the more gory sequences were deleted from the US version of Resident Evil, and once again, the Japanese version of Director's Cut has the gore. This is a small complaint in the big picture, but a Director's Cut shouldn't really have any censorship if it's gonna live up to the name. I don't know, seems like the censorship really should have been a bigger deal, but I guess the score says otherwise. Personally speaking, I think you're better off playing the Resident Evil remake, but that's just my take."
This holiday season, be sure to get that special someone the gift they really want.
The most intense PlayStation games ever. Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil, the Director's Cut. Now supports DualShock analog controller.
Hey, thanks for watching the first part of this PlayStation Plus Review Crew premiere episode. Ooh, that's a mouthful. We'll be back on Friday for the second half, which includes Tekken 2, Wild Arms, Worms Armageddon, and more. Now, here's the question I have for you. What PlayStation 1 games do you want to see on PS Plus? Honestly, I wish they would just open up the floodgates and just post pretty much everything available. But maybe you have a specific game that you want to see on the service. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back later this week with a review of Thunder Kid 2, along with more PS Plus games. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,